Hi, folks, and welcome to Film Optimist, where we talk about all things film with optimism. I'm your co-host, Seth Boyd,
I am Megan Tierney Flores.
and we are welcomed once again by the illustrious Allie Felker. Welcome back to the podcast, Allie.
Woohoo.
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So happy to have you back. Tell us what we're watching, what we're discussing.
So we are discussing one of my favorite, I guess I can't call it a trilogy, but we're discussing Star Wars, which I am very excited about. Star Wars was introduced to me at a very young age. And I don't know if you've seen people on Instagram like sharing their lore, but I think Star Wars is definitely a part of my lore.
Mhm.
And me both. Allie, do you remember how old you were, or like, do you remember watching Star Wars for the first time?
I think I was 6.
Oh,
I was
wow.
probably too young.
Yeah.
It's violent.
To where it's
Like,
kind of boring when you're like that young almost,
yeah.
or
I remember like the scene where the guy's arm gets cut off when they're in the
Yeah.
water
yes.
Tatooine. Yeah, and I remember that being like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that before. Like that was like, oh my gosh, like yeah,
Did your parents go too?
yeah,
So they were fans, right?
they were fans. Actually, the long story is my mom. So my mom had me at a young age, and bio dad is like not part of the picture. And when my mom got married, her husband was like, "Wait, what do you mean she hasn't seen Star Wars?" Like, like it was like an affront. So
What an interesting stepdad. I gotta step in and fix the Star
Yeah.
Wars
yeah, he's
situation.
like, "All right, first things first,
Relationship
we're
problem.
sitting down and we were watching Star Wars, and we did,
Yeah.
and like that was actually like a very fundamental, and it was cool because it was something that we could like bond over. Uh,
That's fine.
but yeah, and then pretty soon I was trying actually I wanted to look it up. Do you remember when the episode 1 came out?
1999.
Okay, so we were
Mm.
I was born in 92. I remember seeing
Likewise, yeah.
I remember seeing that in the theaters.
Okay.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw Star Wars in the theaters until Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, yeah.
I have similarly. I watched it. I was maybe 10.
Okay.
And I think also Allie and I have shared the homeschool Christian background.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for what Star Wars was definitely one of those parents understanding what it was. You can't watch it. And
Okay.
at one point, I think I'm going to give a shout out to my grandfather, Hoyt, the living one. I think he just intervened at one point, who was an atheist and was like been like the kind of one of the only non-religious people in the family who just, I think at one point explained like, oh, it's good versus the evil. There's nothing bad in there. Like they can
Yeah.
watch Star Wars. I'm assuming that's what happened because that's what happened with like a Harry Potter and a few other things
Yeah.
as a kid. And at one point, it was just like overnight, okay, you guys can watch Star Wars. And then we just owned the original trilogy on VHS. And my brother and I watched it constantly. Like, we had like a 10-inch screen TV in our bedroom. Not the way to watch Star Wars, but a way to watch Star Wars. And we just would go through the whole trilogy like every day. Like we'd watch one, then we'd start another one. We'd fall asleep watching it. We'd wake up, turn it back on. It was like a continuous loop for maybe like a month or two of just watching Star Wars. And
Yeah.
pretty fun
I was
childhood in
very
that
much
in
the
that
same
sense.
way. Like
Yeah,
had the trilogy on
right.
VHS, watch them
Yeah.
over and over again. But for me, I really only liked the beginning of Empire Strikes Back.
Okay. When they're in Hoth.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
would watch that part and then like skip
Fair
to Revenge
enough.
of the Sith. Or yeah, the
Return
Return
of
of
the
the
Jedi.
Jedi.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are, folks, we are here to talk about Star Wars, which is what it was released as. We're talking about the original movie, now released as A New Hope, which in researching, it's like, when the hell did they start adding the episodes? It was actually when the original Star Wars was going back in theaters to promote Empire Strikes Back came out. Then it was episode
Mhm.
4. It was in theaters just as Star Wars. Then it was episode 4, A New Hope. So it was as early as the 80s that it was added.
Wow.
But it was not originally released at that, which adds confusion for a lot of folks. So, Megan, when did you watch Star Wars?
I watched Star Wars yesterday for the first time in my life. Well, that's kind of not fair. Like, I feel like everybody kind of sees chopped up bits and pieces, but
Sure.
yeah, I
Yeah.
I sat down to watch Star Wars: A New Hope for the first time yesterday. It's so fun hearing your guys' experience. I think that like my we were just Harry Potter girls, my sister and I. Like
Okay. Yeah.
that is the one-to-one equivalent of like what your guys'
Hmm.
experience is like sounds
Right.
like. So I know I think it was like it passed my parents'
Mhm.
age, and then it just passed
Okay.
like my sister's age. So it is kind of like circumstantial, I guess, in that regard, just
Yeah.
pop culture wise, I guess, of what was happening for us. But yeah, fresh eyes to
Yeah.
a franchise. I have seen like Kylo Ren versions and like
Okay.
Okay,
all
I was
Sure.
gonna ask. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
dipped my toes into also not all of them. I think I saw like The Force Awakens and the second one.
Sure.
And enjoyed Kylo Ren's character, but kind of know about the bastardization that Disney's done with it.
Yeah.
So we can maybe talk about that too. But yeah, this
Yeah.
is
We will.
my original watch.
I think with Ali and I being like growing up as Star Wars kids, we will probably talk a little bit of All Stars because it's inevitable.
Oh,
Um,
right.
and even then, like it's come out of the podcast before, and I've come up against him. I am still actually more of a Star Trek guy, but I do still love Star Wars,
That's
and
what I
there's a lot that I love
remember,
about
Sith.
it. And
Hmm.
so, I think so. A question for you, Megan, having just seen it, like this Star Wars in particular is one of those rare movies that I think maybe Planet of the Apes is another one,
Yeah.
or maybe Casablanca. I mean, we did that where like it's so referenced in culture. Like you, do you feel like
Oh,
you'd already seen it when you watched it? Like, did you feel like there was nothing new based off of memes and just kind of like Simpsons jokes? It just decades of references to this, or was it like, oh no, this is I didn't know this was what it was.
it's so true. I mean, I actually found it surprising, but kind of, all the lines, like
Hmm.
literally having not seen it, I know the iconic lines. I know I'm also like John Williams' score is just so
Of
amazing. I'm a
course,
big
yeah,
fan of that, like not having watched the movie.
yeah.
So there's just so it was so weird to like have so much of it and then
Hmm.
having not seen the movie. But it was like a surprising watch, I guess, in ways that I didn't expect. Like I thought that it was kind of like you almost forget that it's kind of a simple like
Sure.
plot, I guess.
Mhm.
And I can only like I wish I really liked the zeitgeist like talks about when movies came out, and
Hmm.
I know that this was like a pivotal like change in like movie going eras, and that it was just kind of thought to be a flop at the or it was there was no expectations basically for a movie like this, and that is
Right.
just
It
literally
was it was a I should say it was a big success, but it was not
it
expected to be a
was.
big
That's
success.
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you almost can't even fathom that now. Like it's just so, it's so different. So
Right.
it was a surprise to me, in just that it's like it is kind of like a simple but but complex world, but like a simple
Hmm.
kind of plot line going on.
Yeah.
And it was just fun. It was really like it felt important that I finally
Sure.
watched it, of course.
Fantastic. So Allie, back to you. Um, I do want you to address it. And I want to hear why you picked this because like, there's some relevant reasons. But like, had you seen this in a while? And maybe the first question is like, does the movie differ on viewing now? Than
Mm.
like, is it like? And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to step back in further. Um, this movie differed for me in that like George Lucas has continued to re-edit it and make it worse and worse. There's a lot of CGI that's been added to it.
Oh
Like
my.
you literally can't watch the original version, and you can't even watch like the version I grew up watching that came out on VHS in like the 90s. Like there's
Oh.
more CGI explosions. There's more like Jabba the Hutt used to be a puppet. Now he's this monstrosity. So you'll have a frame where it's cool practical effect and then bullshit CGI. And I think it's been re-edited and re-released 3 or 4 times. And like every time that happens, you can't, unless you still own it on physical media, which unfortunately I don't, you can't find the previous version. It's like out of
Yeah.
distribution, and it's something he's very active about, controlling. Like, no, this is the real version, eh, like 4 times.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen again now since he sold it to Disney. But I will say I definitely had that pain of this thing used to look better. So
Yeah. And I think it's so unnecessary too, because
yeah,
like, I don't know, are there people who are like, man, I really wish somebody added some CGI to this thing?
right.
Like, I just like, is there a demand
Yeah,
out there that we don't know
right.
about? Yeah, because I think it does take away from a lot of the like nostalgia, and that's what
Hmm.
like these older movies like have on this. Yeah,
That's
so
fair.
I feel like there's so much nostalgia to that. And then also like I remember hearing that when in that first scene when like the big battleship like comes, like there was
Right.
nothing like that at the time. Like there was Star
Yeah.
Trek, but nothing like to that scale, right? Like sci-fi had
Hmm.
never had a big hit. So it's like almost disrespectful to try to like redo all the CG or add all the CGI when the original
Yeah.
is for its time so good.
Because I think like there's three major heroes of Star Wars of the original movie. It's the practical effects teams, the production design, and these incredible effects. It's the sound, which
Yeah.
especially like the John Williams score is incredible, but so are the
Yeah.
sound effects. Like the sound of the blaster is iconic. The sound of
Yes.
the lightsaber, all that shit rules. And then it's the core trio. All the actors are pretty good in the first one, but like the charisma of Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher
Yeah.
carry this movie in a way that like is a big problem in the prequels. As even though you have good actors, like you don't have people who have chemistry like that, and you also don't have
Mm,
it written a way for characters to be interacting in that way. There's a lot of problems with the prequels, but I think that's one of the key ones because like it's not like there's bad actors. It's like it's Ewan McGregor and Liam
yeah.
Neeson, in the first, and it's like Natalie Portman's great, Terrence Stamp is in there, but it's like it doesn't work in the same level
Yeah.
of the original Star Wars. And I think that magic charisma, and I will say it, Mark Hamill I think works really well in this movie, but like obviously career-wise, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher did a lot more. Or
Yeah.
actually, Mark
Mm.
Hamill had a great voice acting career, and he's done a lot of other things. But like, I think Harrison Ford is so incredibly charming, and
Yes.
um, and something that I was curious for you, Allie. And I'm sorry, I know I asked like three questions earlier, so we'll go back to them. But like, I experienced that I didn't have because didn't have a sister growing up. Was Carrie Fisher was like Princess Leia like inspiring to you as one? Because I
Mhm.
definitely hear that a lot from
Oh yeah, like no,
person.
I wanted to be her for sure.
Hmm.
And
Great.
like I think I even had like a like I would try to wear not the super sexy Job of the Hutt thing, but like the I was like this isn't going there.
Yeah.
But like her like white outfit with the belt,
Oh,
like I
sure.
Hmm.
definitely tried to like
Yeah.
wear a robe and like put a belt over because like I and like the
Yeah.
Hmm.
braids, the iconic braids and like the circle. I
Yeah.
remember being really upset that my hair wasn't long enough to put in a braid. Like that was yeah. No,
Yeah.
she was great. I mean,
Fantastic.
because especially like when she pulls out the blaster,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's when you're
She's
kind of
ready to
like
fight
you get
right
this
away.
like yeah, it's like oh she's a princess, but she's also a fucking badass, and like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was awesome.
Mhm. And you realize like kind of a war leader too by the end, or
Yeah.
like she commands so many people, like
Yeah,
really, and kind of like basically by herself, besides her dad, I guess, or I don't I don't know if if that's even mentioned, but yeah, so
yeah,
Yeah.
there's
No, I
a lot of people.
uh sorry, her dad's dead, basically.
Oh,
Essentially by the start of this movie. Yeah. But
I
well,
got
yeah.
confused by that.
So yeah.
By who she hugged in the when she's like
oh, that's fair.
Oh yeah,
at the
it's like
rebel
her.
base, I think.
Is it like her?
Megan, are you going to watch the other Star Wars movies, or do you mind if there's spoilers? Because there's
Yeah.
going to be
Oh,
some.
I don't mind.
How?
It's
So
I've
you know
had
she's
plenty of
sisters
spoilers
with
enough.
Luke,
Yes, I do know
and so
that.
so Darth Vader's her dad too.
Mhm.
Yes, I do know
Okay,
that.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I was like, are we going to have to screw around this whole episode by not spoiling Empire Strikes Back for me? So
I'm not shocked. There's nothing that
okay,
about Star Wars at this point that could shock, me. I mean, I'll give it a try, but
something that I feel dumb for not realizing: Vader just means father in German.
I
So that's
think I heard that.
pretty obvious of
Mm.
what's happening there. Um, so, so I would say that one of the previous questions is like, if you wouldn't mind expanding, and I don't think we're going to worry about doing a full full movie description because folks, if you're listening, you have probably done what Megan did, at least watch Star Wars yesterday, or you've seen it previously. But we kind of have there's a lot of meat in these bones without getting too into the overall plot of this one. So, Allie, if you don't mind kind of taking with us, what prompted you to want to discuss this now on the
Yeah.
podcast?
So it started with a honestly, it was a TikTok that I saw by a man named
All
Walter,
great stories begin.
where they were a long, long time ago. Uh, so, by a man named Walter Masterson. And he does a lot of, he goes to a lot of rallies and he like kind of like does the like man on the street stuff where he like talks to
Sure.
people, especially at Trump rallies, and is like, hey,
Mhm.
what do you think about this? But he did this one that was absolutely hilarious where he was dressed as a stormtrooper and he held up a sign that said, the Empire did nothing wrong. And he was actually at a pro-Israel rally at the beginning of like the Israel-Palestine conflict. And it was hilarious and poignant because, people were getting like people were laughing, and then a lot of other people were getting really mad at him because they started to put two and two together and realized that he was comparing basically American Israel to the empire. And I think it's really interesting because like there's a lot of comparisons that can be made, and then we can also get into like what Lucas's like main drive for making this movie was, because there's a lot of comparisons in that as well. But yeah, like I thought that was really funny. And then also just with Trump being elected and seeing all these changes that are being made and seeing kind of how this idea of an American empire is really, people are, I think it's always been there, but people are kind of opening their eyes to it. It's a very important thing for people to think about. And yeah, so that was
Yeah,
what made me think of this. Yeah.
fantastic. We're very glad to have you on here because I think that's been discussed a lot more recently is how inherently political Star Wars is.
Mhm.
I'm not keeping up with the shows. I understand the show Andor is very openly political, but I think it does get lost in things that Lucas has been pretty open about. Star Wars is about Vietnam, and the
Yeah.
rebels are the Viet Cong, and the Empire is the U.S. And he's said that on several occasions. I want to be clear here. I don't really want to paint the picture of George Lucas being this political hero because I don't think he is. Among obvious things about this, he hasn't talked about it enough, and he's definitely talked about it a lot more recently when we're really far removed from Vietnam War. We're very far from this being a new movie in theaters where he is filthy rich. And he's made so much money from Star Wars from merchandising. And when to reference the prequels again, Terrence Stamp, great classic actor, and being asked about his experience working with George Lucas, said he's not a filmmaker, he's a toy maker. And he did get a very lucrative merchandising deal on Star Wars that you can kind of see as the movies go on. You're muted, Allie, sorry. That
It was my kid.
the
Sorry.
movies really okay, that no worries. The movies kind of clearly take a point where like what's going to be a good stuffed animal, what's going to be a good toy, and then we're not too worried about making this political point. But the original movie is based off this idea that I think, and I bring this up because as often is said by Star Trek fans, that Star Trek is inherently more political than Star Wars. I still think that's true, but Star Wars also came out of the gates with a much bolder statement, more immediately that we're wrong about Vietnam. So I think also Ellie referenced the Princess Leia haircut that was inspired by Mexican revolutionary women.
Oh,
I
So
didn't know that.
isn't that
I didn't
cool?
know.
Yeah, look up photos of that. So it's so there is that like very clear illusion there, and I think it also ties into a little bit like you the one outlier with the accents is of course Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Alec Guinness, English actor, and yeah, does a little bit of a posh accent, but other than that, most of the villains are English, have an English accent, and which I think is a very easy for Americans to translate with English back when it just kind of works. It's an old school thing, but when you think of the Empire and you're American and you don't want to hold a mirror, you think of England. You think of the English Empire pretty quickly. So that's I think at least what's going on there. But also, to further point, and with the the stormtrooper thing, it was like it has been bizarrely co-opted by like Elon Musk and so many other conservative people to act like they're the rebels when they are the ones in power.
Yeah.
the richest man in the world referring to himself as being our rebels against
Mm.
the empire. Like, the empire of what? People who think kids should eat? Like, what are you talking about? This is insane. And it is a very common, and it goes back a lot. I remember John McCain decades ago referenced himself as being Luke Skywalker. It's just a really weird
Mm.
old thing of Republicans thinking they're the rebels, not recognizing they're the ones in power. And I think they shouldn't just say it's Republicans. That's bigger than that, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
American empire. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like when you, I think, join into the ideals that like meritocracy and, you know, not just democracy, but just like the American dream and like America first. And,
right.
or when you buy into that and you are a part of it, like
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of funny to say like, oh, I'm the rebel, like,
Right.
like without first checking like the privilege that you have to be a part of this system that benefits,
Right. Because
you. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Megan, this is not meant as a knock on you, but I think we're not as politically aware of or savvy as you are. Like you've done a lot more political activism. You've marched. You've done TED Talks. You are, I think of as a professional activist. Essentially, you've done a
Yes.
lot of work in a lot of fields like this. So we're really grateful to have you here to talk about this. But
I mean,
for,
I call myself a loudmouth.
and
Thank God.
we need more of you.
Yeah.
But you uh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so much of the grift, or the, I shouldn't say the grift because it's more complicated than just trying to get money, but like so much of the political messaging is really towards poor people that they being the right really don't actually care about. But like if you
Mhm.
can convince them that they're the rebel fighting against something,
Mm.
then that's powerful because they are not empowered,
Mm.
but if their vote can go for the empire without them realizing it, then
Yeah.
that is powerful. So
Mm.
And I think even that plays into a larger conversation about like why Trump won. I think that there's a
sure.
lot of people who do feel I don't want to say disadvantaged, but there's a lot of people who are white males who feel like
Sure.
their government has ignored them for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
Yeah.
like the messaging has done really poorly in that. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who feel like I don't know what word I'm looking for, but there's a lot of people who feel like they've been,
Disenfranchised.
what'd you say?
Disenfranchised.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think they feel
Okay.
disenfranchised. And I think that having a point person to sort of be like their rallying cry to be like, yeah,
Yeah.
like you're right. The government has been targeting you or not listening to you or putting you
Right.
to,
Mhm.
off to the side, and you are disenfranchised, and kind of saying like
Mm-hmm.
you are the outlier and you deserve attention and you deserve your needs to be met. I think
Yeah.
was,
Right.
like I think we'll look back on Trump having two successful campaigns and really see how speaking to a group of people and telling them like, no one's told you you're special and you are special. Like
Right.
it's really like
Right.
what was important. But then also just, and then completely ignoring the fact that these are the people who I believe benefit the most from the society that we have. But
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
if they're struggling to pay their mortgage and if they're struggling to buy groceries, they're not going to feel like that. They're just going to see all of the things around them, and it's going to look like all of those things are working against them when really it's that's just not reality, but that's just what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
uh, one more parallel that I wanted to make was looking at how like Star Wars was sort of this critique on Vietnam. I truly
Mhm.
feel that Palestine is our Vietnam. Like,
Yes,
you
absolutely.
know, you see
Yeah.
all of these college, sorry, my daughter's having a freak out. I don't know if you can hear it.
She's
That's
agreeing
okay.
loudly.
She's going to be another activist.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's like you see these college campuses, you see young people especially saying, hey, this is wrong. And you just there I read this book. There's a really excellent book called The Women, which is about women who served as nurses in Vietnam and then eventually
Okay.
came home and saw like and then eventually became sort of the people speaking out against the war, and also
Right.
just like their experiences with PTSD. It's a really, really excellent book. It's really fucking sad, but it's so good. And listening to that, I was like crying because I was like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
see so many parallels. And granted, like we're not there, like there, I don't want to
Right.
make it sound like, oh, our experience is the same as people who like literally saw their brothers and uncles like die, but or come home completely like broken in body and mind. Like I don't want to say that it's the same in that way, but I feel like we are seeing it on our phones and we are like watching a genocide happen, and we're reacting in a very similar way as young people during Vietnam reacted. And it's so interesting that like this movie is a critique of that, and now we're seeing kind of history repeat itself where this empire is
Right.
working to like completely destroy a region, and the people who are resisting that are not seen as rebels. you know they're
Right.
and so that's also something that's
They're
very
seen as the
interesting.
villains somehow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah.
Uh, and um, well said, Allie. And I think yeah, it is terrifying. I mean, among the most terrifying things we're dealing with for a world here is all the precedent universities sent on cracking down on free speech by not only protests on campus being thwarted, police being called, students being expelled, but staff being fired, professors for writing in defense of Palestine. And I think it's, folks, if you're not paying attention, it's really worth noting that there are several Holocaust survivors who are on record saying that Israel's committing the Holocaust. So this is not some weird niche view. And as several recent polls showed, Harris lost because of her views on Palestine. There's many people who did not vote for her specifically because she said she's going to do what Joe Biden is saying, I'm talking, and not addressing a very fucking relevant question of, why are we allowing this genocide? And not only did she not do that in her campaigns as a vice president, and Biden as president didn't do anything to stop it either. And it makes it very hard to be. I hope a lot of people realize that Democrat is not a left. I consider myself a leftist, a socialist, and the Democratic Party has very little to do with what I believe in. It's better, but it's not good. Even better, it's better than Republicans. But
I actually stood up and protested at a Kamala Harris event before she was the candidate.
good.
So and I was like terrified. I had no idea what was going to happen. And I don't know if you saw what happened at the Idaho town hall a couple weeks ago. It's I don't remember the woman's name. I can look it up later, but basically there was like a town hall in Idaho in a very, very, very like red area that actually has a lot of like white supremacy like history, white supremacist history. And the short story is a woman was like dragged out of this place by two men wearing all black who did not tell her who they were, who were apparently hired security but didn't inform her of that. And it's horrifying. Like it was a really scary video, but I was like, that could have been me. Like I was in a very protected place where I just stood up. I had a Palestinian flag. And I stood up at the event, and there was already a woman who I believe was Palestinian who was like yelling, like, just facts, like this many children have died so far. We weren't like yelling, cuss words. We weren't yelling like, it was, peacefully using our right to free speech and also our right to protest. And when we were asked to leave, we left. And what I yelled was, I have lost a child. I know what it's like to lose a child, and something about like these women in Palestine are like, I like losing, like, I don't know, I can't really remember.
Yeah.
Also, my adrenaline was like really high.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what was crazy about that is that there was a woman sitting next to me wearing an all pink suit who grabbed my purse and tried to pull me down. And I turned to her and I
Oh my
said,
God.
"Do not touch me." And she said, "I won't touch you, but I'm not going to let you speak." And she was trying to like get in front of me so that I couldn't like yell. And by that time I was getting escorted out anyway, so it didn't really matter. But it was just like really interesting because it's like, here's a rebel, right? Like here's
Right.
somebody who like
You.
identifies as a rebel, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh no, you're not allowed to talk. Like,
Yeah.
like, and I don't know if you saw recently, like Trump gave his address to Congress last night, and
Yeah.
there was like a bunch of Democrats who dressed in all pink. And I'm like, wow.
Bold.
There was one man, I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but he is a congressman from Texas, and he like shook his
Yes.
at him and yelled. And it's like, that is what we need. That is
Right.
like,
Yes.
yeah, we need more people who are willing to stand up and actually like, this is a right that we have. Like, we are allowed to peacefully protest. We are allowed to a certain extent of civil disobedience. And
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
and we have to keep exercising that, because the people who are wearing pink suits are not going to get us where we need to go.
Scary
Absolutely.
aspect, sorry, Seth, that I
No,
heard
you
of
go,
that
Megan.
because I was listening to it on NPR too, and they, you know how they do like live commentary of like, oh, they're like Democrats are sitting, everyone's booing, or like
Yeah,
their
yeah.
stone face. For the man, for that gentleman, they were like, he has. He's walked out of the building like intentionally, and then
Mhm.
I think this morning they were reporting again that I think that he was escorted out.
Wow.
So it's like yet
Yeah.
another instance
Yeah.
of silencing. I mean, literally is the only way to say that. And when you guys were talking, it made me think like Star Wars is really I said that it was kind of like a simple plot, but it is simple
Sure.
in that there's like obviously like the dichotomy of like good versus evil. And I think that l- literally we like we're in a place, America likes to claim we're in a place of like, oh, there's so much more nuance to like our political system, like nobody's like that. I would argue now, like, no, it's not. Now it is very like I've never felt more of like the bipartisan
Right.
uh, in the sense of like we have two parties and they are the ones fighting each other and we're all losing. You know,
Right.
none of
You're all
us are,
losing.
at least in those parties, we're all like for the majority being
Right.
screwed, being fucked. And like the fight is um the distraction against
Yeah.
Yeah.
like what's happening. So it's very like infuriating, and like you could look at Star Wars and say, oh well, that's so what a simple plot, that's where we
Right.
are. Like it's
It is that plainly
maddening.
good versus evil, right?
Yes, it's very
Yes.
maddening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so interesting that you say that, because when I would talk to people about like especially about like the genocide in Palestine, one of the first things that they would say is, well, it's really complicated.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I would be like, actually no, like it's pretty simple. Like
It's not. Yeah.
Yes.
we have like very clearly determined rules of war. And
Right.
you know, we have very clearly defined rules of like what constitutes a human rights violation. And
Yeah.
you know, and to me, like I actually, yeah, it's like I find a lot of comfort in that. Like
Yeah.
in, and I think that,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that a lot of the world is very gray, and like we can debate nuance and we can debate that, but like when it comes to the things that are so black and white and that are so like clearly wrong, to me
Yeah.
it's like there's no, I can't, it's very hard for me to engage with that
Yes.
when there, and I've talked about this recently too, where I've had like a few dialogues with people who are really happy with President Trump right now. And with those people, I'm like, if our values are aligned, then we can have a conversation. But once I find that we have no values that are in the same place, like all of that nuance kind of like goes away. And it's like, okay,
Mhm.
we just don't see the world the same way. And that's okay. We don't have to dialogue, but it's like, hey, if our values are aligned and we can talk about policy and we can talk about nuance, and then I can show you where there are things that are black and white in my view, and you
Mhm.
can show me things that are maybe black and white in your view, and we can find a place for common ground, like that's fine. But like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very hard, and I think I had a little bit of hope, oddly, during Trump's first presidency that because I had some surprisingly good dialogues with people, um, and maybe I'm just too tired right now, but I'm hope is a fleeting memory right now. But
Yeah.
I think one thing would say too, Allie, we with your experience, which was horrific, and thank you for being so brave, and thank you for being a true hero
Yeah.
for an incredible cause. It is obviously so biased. The January 6th protesters, which was a violent protest,
Mm-hmm.
were pardoned. Many of them, and many of them were asking for pardons on their child pornography charges as well, which I think is important to note because there's always this bizarre thing about Democrats being pedophiles, and I don't
Yeah.
think statistically that's correct. There's a lot more pastors, youth pastors I've met, by the way,
Yeah.
and family members who are much more likely to commit such things. So it is clearly like you are wrong if you're protesting us, and you're
Mm-hmm.
right if you're protesting on behalf of us. It is such a clearly biased, selfish thing. And
Oh
it's
my
also,
gosh.
yeah,
Oh,
you bet, sorry.
I mean, I have been told that I'm anti-Semitic, and
Yeah,
I haven't been told this to my face, but I'm sure I've been linked with like terrorism. And like, since
yeah,
this is a public platform, I should probably say, like, I do believe that the October 7th attacks were an act of terror. Like,
sure,
and it's like, it's a very, going back to the simplicity, it's like, if you're killing civilians, that's
right.
either a human rights violation or it's an act of terror. Depends on who the
Mhm.
actor is. But, and
Mm,
that's against the rules of war. I can say that and also say that Israel's actions against Gaza and the West Bank for the past, what's 60 years, have been atrocious and have been human rights violations and constitute
right,
genocide. Like, both can be
right,
true. But yeah, it's like, oh, me saying anything about that, automatically I'm violent. Like,
right,
it's
right.
like, what, like, me attending a protest, and like, I went to Berkeley when they were doing their like sit-in. It was one of the most peaceful things that I've ever seen. It was just a bunch of people in a camp. Like, there was nothing
I'm
violent
glad to hear
happening
that.
about it. But it's like, oh no, these are violent protesters. And then yeah, to your point,
Yeah,
absolutely no comparison to the like people who
or
were killed,
Charlottesville.
yeah, who were like, yeah, attacking our nation's capital and putting hundreds of lawmakers' lives at risk. Like, that's different.
Well, absolutely. And folks, I want to thank you for sticking with us because these are trying times. These are horrible times to be alive. But so we do need, and that's why we brought in the expert, Allie Felker, for this. We will get back
I
to
don't
the
know if I'm an
movie in a moment.
expert.
Megan, I consider an expert. You, Allie, you were like in Egypt for Arab Spring, and
Yeah, on
you've been
accident. But
escorted out of protesting a politician. I don't know. That makes you more of an expert than
oh my
us.
gosh,
So,
I always forget about that.
how do you
I
forget about that?
It was circumstantial.
oh my gosh.
um, but no, you are an expert. We're really glad to have you on here. We'll get back to the movie in a second, but I think this kind of gets into what the complicated thing about like how political is Star Wars, because on the one hand, very obviously, and Lucas has said it, but on the other hand, because I think a thing is a pro and a detriment to it is it is so obviously the Empire is bad because they're bad, and the rebels are good because they're pro. You never get like a thesis statement from the Empire.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have a thing that like other sci-fi like Dune will have of, or we're exploiting a resource. That's what this is about. You kind of like capitalism doesn't even really come up as a thing in Star Wars, um, which is kind of I will say real quickly just because it might come up later. why I think Star Trek is better than Star Wars, why I prefer it, is like the bigger Star Wars gets, the worse it gets, because it still focuses on the Skywalker legacy,
Mm,
and it becomes more and more fantasy. It becomes more about restoring order to things. Whereas Star Trek can add a new race, it can add new planets, it can add new things, and it doesn't matter because there isn't an overarching story that is what Star Trek is. Star Trek is kind of about hope and this bizarre idea that humans can work together at best, but like there isn't like a major plot that is Star Trek. Where Star Wars, and it's one of the problems I think, especially like I really like the first two Star Wars sequels. By the third one, Rey's a Skywalker. Well, that fucking
yeah,
sucks.
yeah.
Or she's not a Skywalker. I can't remember. She's
A-
descendant of Palpatine.
yeah.
And it's like, well, this is family lineage shit again. This sucks.
Which is also
Yeah.
like not fun to think about.
Right. It's not
Like,
at all.
like,
Because like
How?
because the Last Jedi really poses the idea of anybody can be a hero, and then
Yeah.
Rise of Skywalker says no, they can't. Also, we killed a bunch of child soldiers in this one. The good guys did. It's a really bizarre movie. It's a really
Yeah.
bizarre thing. But sorry, it goes back to the like going back to Star Wars here. We're gonna try to be a little less political for the rest of the episode, maybe, but I have no promises to kind of talk about fun things about it. So Megan, first time viewer, like, did you like it? Did you get it? Did you like this is why we still talk about this? What kind of stood out to you?
I did like it. I like I say, I think you said it well, Seth, that I was surprised by how these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, and you are thrown into that. There is no
Right,
explanation of how did Darth Vader get there? Why is he breathing like that? Like
right.
what's going on? What's the rules of this
Sure.
place, I guess? But
Yeah,
I get like in a way I get the essence of maybe even what Disney was trying to pull out from it or like extract from it and all its juices and
sure.
like dry it to extract it so much that it's dead and gone. But like
Right.
the alien aspects are so fun. Like I like I love the cantina scene. I think that's like so it gives a good
Yeah,
it almost feels like Halloweenish. Like it reminded me of like Halloween
absolutely.
Town or something like that.
We should give a
Um
shout out for two other quick people. Sorry, Rick Baker, who's
please.
legendary makeup artist and physical effects artist. He did, I think, every monster in that scene.
Wonderful.
And so they look like his apprentice actually worked on that thing.
Oh,
But also he famously did, among other things, Werewolf Among Us. No, no, Werewolf Among Us, Jesus, what's it called?
yeah,
Werewolf in London,
yeah, yeah.
which has the most to date impressive werewolf transformation scene that is incredible. It's crazy that
Yes.
the 70s and looks that good. And he
Wow.
did that. And so he did a lot of the effects in this movie, and like he did say this was definitely like Lucas likes making monsters and would hire good people to make monsters. So I think
Oh,
those
good.
work really well, which is one of the reasons why, again, like the added CGI suck. It's like you had real cool people making practical effects that looked incredible.
Oh,
Um,
I'm glad to hear you guys as fans talk about the CGI just quickly because
yes.
like it is
How off-putting
jarringly
was that, right?
bad. It's it's actually wild. And then I watched a comparison video to try and see as much
Okay,
original
good. Yeah,
content as possible, which they have. It's
yeah,
it's a little bit it's comprehensive but not like everything I would assume. And
sure.
they added like CGI rocks to where R2D2
Yeah,
is hiding, and to me that
right. I didn't
I
know
mean
about that.
when the rocks are the best CGI that's added, like there's a not it shouldn't have happened basically. Anything else. The
Right.
rocks were okay for me, I guess, but that's about
So
it.
I think we might have talked about this before. This reminds me of in Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's like a
Oh.
one of those actors on actors talking. There was
Oh,
Colin Farrell talking to Jamie Lee Curtis. It's like, man, that scene with the two rocks. How did they do that? She's like, Colin, those are just rocks. That wasn't
yep.
CGI. Those are just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
rocks. Like
With
then
like
they moved the rock with
googly
the googly
eyes.
eyes. Like that was
Yep.
not a fact.
Yeah.
Because again,
Perfect.
why would you, if you need rocks, why would you use something other than rocks?
Yeah. Yeah. It looked
um,
great.
but like also the practical effects, like all the space travel scenes are these
Yes.
models, and they're
Yep.
incredible and they're intricate. But the other person who gets less discussed for absolutely saving Star Wars is Marsha Lucas, George Lucas's wife, who edited the original trilogy.
Oh wow.
And um, she did she blames the fact that she's bred in very late to edit Return of the Jedi, with Return of the Jedi being what it is, and so like even I can't save this, and so, uh, um, but the movies are incredibly well edited. And then before she edited Star Wars, she did the first. She did 2 or 3 movies for Martin Scorsese, including Taxi Driver. She was a
Okay.
fantastic editor, a renowned one, who was, I think they had divorced by the time he made the prequel, so she was not involved. And I think there's a real clear distinction between her being involved, because it wasn't just editing. She's also like, I don't think that idea works, George. You should try this for several key things.
Nice.
As a good wife does.
She
And
probably would have saved us from Jar Jar Binks.
yes, the most insane.
Yeah.
Allie, are you aware of the theory that Jar Jar Binks is a Sith Lord?
That no, but
Sent to
I'm
fuck
gonna.
everything up is the idea that this
Wow.
like this kind of long Kong psyop of a bumbling fool who becomes a senator. It's kind of the only way it makes sense to me.
That is so funny. Unless he thought that it was going to become this like toy, like that he was like,
And
oh
it did, but it's
no,
this really weird, like, because there is humor in all
yeah,
the Star Wars movies that works, that's pretty organic, and sometimes it's pretty silly. You know, you have Harrison Ford saying "How are you?" after trying to bumble on the comm, like that's funny, that works. Then you just have an alien with a vaguely Rastafarian accent.
yes. Oh my
It's really
God.
fucking weird. And I think multiple actors from that movie went to extreme therapy afterwards. I know the kid played Anakin did, and I don't know why they cast him. Like he did, frankly has no charisma. Like he has no screen presence, and like that's a fact.
Yeah.
And it's sucks. I feel bad for him. Like you have some really weird choices in casting. That's like somebody else would have stopped you, George. If,
Somebody would have saved us from that
right.
monstrous
Um,
thing.
Another so it's a little insider thing. One of the people who largely funded this movie was Francis Ford Coppola, because he already had success from The Godfather, Part Two and Part One, Part Two. And Francis Ford Coppola, also famously always having money issues, funded this. And I imagine they're not still close, because I don't think Lucas paid him back, or if he did, he just paid him the cash amount back rather than like the insane lucrative contract he had with merchandising. Kids like, it was not that long after this that Francis was struggling to make Apocalypse Now, which is maybe his best movie. It's not, it's Godfather Part Two, and has really only made like 2 or 3 good movies or decent movies since then. You know, and like famously sold it, like spent like decades making wine to build up his winery to sell it to make Megalopsis, a movie that bombed. Meanwhile, you still know George Lucas is over here fucking millions on toys. It's like, how do you, like, you guys probably don't talk, right? Because
Oh my
I
gosh.
couldn't imagine having that dynamic. Like, remember when I wrote you that fucking check, George? So, um, I Coppola's made some great movies. He's also has a really weird career too. That like I've watched some of his other movies, like, well, that isn't good either. So I don't know what's going on with him, but different episode.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, one of the guys who funded this. But I think the effects team is really the heroes of this movie, and I think that's why it really works. Is that like the practical effects are so practical. They're these massive models that look so cool, and there's
Yeah.
great matte paintings throughout this movie and in
Yeah.
the original trilogy that just work really well. Um,
Mhm.
did you have a favorite aspect of this movie, or if you had like actor or anything and seeing it for the first time, Megan?
Um, I think I'm liking like what you like you said, like all the actors are it's quite kind of a small cat. Oh, well, I shouldn't say that, but like, our main
Well, it's
three
an
are
ensemble
kind
cast,
of
but like your main
uh,
three is there
yes.
throughout. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
in that regard, I mean, how could you ignore Harrison, like a peak Harrison
right.
Ford like moment too? I understand that, but I think it's more of like the things that jumped out at me were kind of
Sure.
what you're putting down, Seth, about like just sort of there was kind of a clear world created, I guess,
Hmm.
and like cinematic feel, I guess, is what I could say and kind of pick up on from these. I have a quick like about the
Oh,
story
please.
too.
Yeah.
It was my one tie-in to to Star Wars being incorporated into like college and stuff, and there's obviously like they were trying to tie it into religion and like how the force equals God. That's
Sure.
that's it. But or is like a
Megan and I went
common
to a Catholic
interpretation.
college, folks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I circumstantially went to K through a college Catholic
Yeah.
school, so it got talked about and tossed around like that. But
Sure.
what shout out to St. Mary's Death. Like, once again, they do impress me because
Yeah.
something about the class was like they kind of took that and twisted it on its head and was like the Force is very clearly like Taoism, like
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than rejecting like Christianity. And I thought that was so interesting. And then to hear you say like it's tied into Vietnam, like
Mhm.
war stuff is like another little like very interesting aspect of it. And because we were learning about like major religions or something like that, and
Yeah.
every that aspect, everything clicked. So it's interesting that it is both political and then like this very deep religious metaphor going on too that
That's a
is
great point.
clear but also like there's these two like threads going through the whole like DNA, I guess, of what Star Wars kind of is what I
Yeah.
can pick up on. But I love that it was specifically like Taoism, you know.
I had not heard that before, Megan, but that makes perfect sense from I recall
Yeah.
Taoism from my religion class in college, which is
Right.
cool.
I'm
And
Rocky too, but
Yeah.
I should say there's I would say like four major influences on Star Wars we should talk about real quick. And one is just like adventure movies from the 30s and even
Mm.
20s, like swashbuckling stuff when that was really not even just Aeroflot, but like Douglas Fairbanks, stuff like that. And out of that, the serials, the B movie serials of Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, those two things. But then also Kurosawa movies, particularly his samurai movies.
oh wow.
So
Yeah, yeah.
they actually really wanted Toshiro Mifune to play Vader.
Oh.
He declined it, which may be a good. I don't know, but Mifune is in Steven Spielberg movie,
Mm.
and they Spielberg, Lucas, and Coppola all like worshipped, as they should, and so did Scorsese and a lot of other people.
Mm.
This, but like they really adored Kira Kurosawa, and they produced several of his later movies when he was struggling to make films, and they had the funds, which is very cool. One of the coolest things Lucas has done. But Vader's helmet is based off of a
Yes.
samurai helmet, right?
That's right.
And
I
the
That makes
remember.
sense.
robes of both Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I know you and I have talked about this offline before, but so fucking funny to me. It's such a weird, unforced error of like Obi-Wan Kenobi is just wearing these robes. And then the prequels reveal that's the Jedi robe, that's the Jedi
Yeah.
uniform. So Obi-Wan Kenobi changes his first name to Ben, keeps Kenobi, and then disguises himself as a different Jedi. When we find out the Jedi are supposed to be like banned and all shut down. So there's
Mm.
other weird things that make about the prequels that like, why'd you make the first movies worse by adding these odd details? Like you made your original movies stupider by making this choice in 2002 or whatever. But
Mm.
also Kenobi's obviously inspired by a Japanese name. So those are some of the major influences on it, which I think do show, and there's loving allusions to those in the film. And that's anytime a filmmaker is clearly making a lovely homage to something
Mm.
that they really care about, that's usually going to be a good movie. If
Mhm.
they're confident they really love that thing and understand what it is, that's going to be pretty good. Like a person making a thriller because they love Hitchcock movies and they truly understand them is going to make a pretty good thriller.
Oh, the other thing I was going to say is
Sure.
so Drew likes to make fun of people who have like the rebel symbol on their cars
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
because he's like it's the best thing ever because like you see somebody with like that symbol and then like you drive forward and it's just like an average white dude.
Right.
And you're just like, oh yeah, you're the rebel. Like,
Right.
so funny.
Okay.
Uh,
So I have a few kind of questions, comments, concerns
mm.
about this movie, then we'll start to move on. So we gotta get through a few questions first.
Okay.
How do you guys think the Academy works in Star Wars? Because that was something that was bothering me in rewatching this, because the Rebels seem to have an academy that Luke wants to go to,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that threw me
Well,
because remember as a kid saying like he wants to go to the academy, maybe that must be run by the Empire. But like no, his friend Biggs went to the academy and is
yes.
now a rebel. So
It
there's
Okay,
seems
some
my
infrastructure
collusion.
theory.
there.
Okay,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
theory is it's like a regular academy that's like set up like for anybody, and then rebels pull people from it.
It actually makes sense. That's a pretty common recruiting tactic
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
you know, like historically for communists, and
Yeah.
why they didn't pick me, I don't know. Just kidding. But yeah, but that was just one of the weird, like, I think every now and then there's a detail
Yeah.
that's like, I think Lucas actually had a thought here, but it doesn't work. A very prime example here is the insane line about this ship made the parcel run and whatever, or the whatever run and
Oh.
whatever
Yeah.
parsecs. It's a nonsensical thing. It's like he gives a unit of measurement to describe what unit of measurement he took. According to George Lucas, and that line was gauging how savvy were. How comes off at all, and that it just comes off as some weird bullshit. It does not come off as he's trying to gauge his customers. So I feel like how many other kind of things in this movie just are supposed to work in a way that they don't, but
Yeah.
but so many other things work well enough that it doesn't matter. Because that line bothers mathematicians more than me, who understand the numbers. It's like saying we went this many yards and this many miles, basically. And
That's really funny. I think
nothing
there's
is
a lot of stuff like that I
sure.
just like as a kid, because I watched it as a kid, you know, like
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
watch stuff as a kid and you just accept that you don't understand things. Like
Yes.
there's just some things that you're just like, nah, when I'm older, I'll understand. And then you watch
Right.
it when you're older and you're like, I
What?
still don't understand. Yeah.
That
That's a
makes me
really
feel
good
better
point.
because
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
am I not comprehending this
Yeah.
film? Like,
Yeah.
And like the movie starts like in the middle of action. Like,
Medias
Yeah.
res,
so it's,
absolutely.
yeah, it is confusing, especially
yeah.
like as an adult, because as a kid, you just accept like, this is what's happening. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Sorry. That's all because we've been going long here. I'm gonna have one more point and then a question for everybody.
Okay.
Sure.
Another interesting thing is, like, in hindsight, again, like, how is this supposed to come with Harrison Ford? Harrison Ford's incredibly charming. He's still great. Was wonderful in this movie, but he's also like, I don't think Luke is exaggerating what a piece of shit the Millennium Falcon is in the universe. And this is a smuggler with a strange animal, which it's also apparently canonical that Wookiees live a lot longer than humans. So Han is Chewbacca's pet, not vice versa. If you're going to have that dynamic on there, which I love, great.
Love that.
So it's like, is he the coolest guy in the universe, or is he absolutely stumbling forward into this, into marrying a princess? You know, is he this like, and I think Harrison Ford is so cool that he makes the character seem a lot more competent than Han Solo actually he is. But Allie, what's your take, having grown up with this movie, and Megan having seen this movie the first time? Han Solo, cool or not? So
I think I was really fixated on Leia and like
okay,
how cool she was.
Very fair.
That I would think I just didn't,
fair.
you know, like think about it in that way. Like Han Solo wasn't super cool to me. And I also I think as a kid, I sadly shipped Luke and Leia. And then as
Then
the
he got
years
to
went
like
on, I
episode
was
3
like,
and like, oh, or
wait a second.
Return of the Jedi, yeah.
Yeah, I think as a kid, I thought Han Solo was mean. But I think as
That's fair.
when I got older, I was like, oh no, he's a cool guy. Like,
Yeah.
No, I think he came off as like mean to me.
Because we should clarify, this movie is large. All the movies are made for kids, which is one of the weird criticisms of like the prequels or the new sequels. Like, they're made for kids. Like, they were always made for kids. Like, and a good example of that is, did you like it when you were a fucking kid?
Yeah.
It works as a kid. And that's why there's a toy line from the beginning. Like, this is not like an exaggeration. They were literally always made for kids.
Yeah.
They just worked well enough that you would like it as a teenager or as a 20-something, or you still like it today. But it should not be lost. I think you're right, because as a kid, I definitely thought Han was mean.
Yeah. And it's so funny because it's like, oh, you know, like as an adult, you look back and you're like, oh no, it's just bravado.
Right.
But like
Exactly.
it's like, oh, he's like the bully. Like,
yeah, but he's also like,
group.
because you definitely have as a kid, you're like, well, Luke is the hero and the hero should get the girl type of
Exactly. Yeah.
you know, mentality.
Yeah.
I think Mark Hamill's best moment of the whole movie, and he's good in it, but it's not well, it's not as fun of a part is when Han Solo is saying like, "Do you think a girl like me?" And he doesn't even let him finish. He says no,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
interrupting Harrison
No.
Ford.
Yeah.
That's the most like maybe personality we see of him, and it's beautiful. I love it.
That's fair. Well, that was kind of my take on it too. That part in particular, I was like, this
Yeah.
is kind of like turning into a boys' club, and I don't like.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, I don't like that. And
Right.
they're objectifying this princess who's awesome.
Sure,
And
that's fair. That's a really good point because it's obviously one of us is going to get with the girl, right?
yeah, is
And
their one talk or like very so quickly after
right,
meeting her, and I was like, I don't like that. But
yeah,
but oh no, like to me, Han is a vagabond. Like he does come across that well, and especially like
yeah,
his I think it kind of reminds me of that like 70s, like if you could get by with like gambling your way through life, you were kind of cool. And maybe nowadays I'm like, I don't that's not attractive to me, I
right.
guess. But so
That's
that it
fair.
was kind of like that.
Yeah,
It felt very
yeah,
70s. Like it was
Yeah.
showing its
that's
age
true.
there a little bit.
Um, we should mention Harrison Ford was a carpenter for years while also being a movie. Like he did a balcony for George Lucas and Copeland and other people, and he was also a weed dealer. So there's a story of I think it's Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas, the singer, talking about
Yeah.
somebody saying like we should go see this movie, and then she watches Star Wars, like sees Harrison Ford's like, why is my weed dealer in this?
That's awesome. I did not
um,
know that.
Could you
but
imagine that experience?
right,
Like
Yeah.
being in the
Being like,
movie, like being in
oh,
a theater and being like, that's my dealer.
yeah.
there's definitely a correlation to um, Harrison Ford being a carpenter and appearing to be the most masculine man alive to
Mm.
multiple generations of men, including my father. So,
Right. They're like,
who was a
I
general
like that
contractor.
guy.
It's like, wow, this guy gets it. um, but the question, sorry, that I have kind of, last question that we'll get to is like, do you have a favorite aspect of Star Wars? I have mine in mind. I'll try to let you go first
Ooh.
unless you need to think of it. If you do need to think of it, I can go first.
I might throw mine out there just quickly
Let's
that
do it.
I
Yeah,
I think that the music is iconic. Like I can't get
that's
over
fair. Yeah, yeah,
how encompassing it is of this world. So I'll just throw it out there that like I
sure.
mean and like we said like kind of atmospheric all those cinematic things like that, but
Yeah.
I like I can't get
It's
over
an incredible score. And it
how
elevates it
perfect it
so
is.
much. Like the music in
Yes.
Star Trek is always works. Like the Star Trek
Yeah.
theme song, especially the first season, it's kind of goofy. It's fun. It's much more dignified for Next Generation,
Yeah.
but like it's never bad. But like it is not, oh my God, we're watching cinema.
I
This is
yeah.
like what is this, an orchestra? Like it is such a thing that really elevates Star Wars in a way that would just not work. Not just if it wasn't a classically trained orchestra. Just if it was somebody other than John
Amazing.
Williams, it would not be the
Yeah.
same thing,
I've never heard a more perfect score almost. Like I for a
Yeah,
movie, it's just crazy. So that'll be
it's
mine.
incredible. Yeah, that's fair. Allie, do you have yours?
Yeah, but it's gonna sound so dumb after all of our
Let's hear it.
political critiques. Um, and this goes back to like what I loved as a kid. For me, it's the flying. Like
Okay, that
think
rules.
about
Yeah,
like yeah. As soon as the Millennium Falcon hits light speed, like
yeah,
that
Yeah.
was great. And then just like all the coordination of the end scene when they're all flying together,
yeah.
like it was great. I loved it. That's my favorite part.
I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here because it's mayonnaise podcast, so we can. Return of the Jedi is not good, but I, as a kid, really liked it because one, they shot a lot of that in the Redwood Forest, and that's cool.
Mm.
Seeing
Yeah.
people go really fast through the Redwood Forest is great. Also, I thought Luke looked great in all black with a green lightsaber, which is the first time you have a new color.
Yes.
And it's like I think that's the iconic Luke look. He's
Mm.
got the Gucci boots, basically. It's a good look, and as always stylish. I'm not straight, so that really did it for me as a kid. It was the black and green combo. Um, but my favorite thing about Star Wars, and we're specifically talking about the original Star Wars movie, is that this movie treats the Force the most interesting as the other movies, where like it's kind of like, do you know about the Force? Where some of the other movies, like obviously we all know what Jedi are, but in the first movie, it's like it is kind of more of a mystery of like how many people know this, etc. Like Han has heard of it, doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
A lot of people have. It's not quite Christian. It's almost like it's even more niche than Christianity because you have this incredible boardroom meeting, like war room scene with high Empire people being like, Vader, you shut the fuck up about your religion. You know, where he just like, is
Yeah.
like, yes, we have a new Death Star that literally can destroy a planet, but that's nothing compared to the power of Christ, is basically what he sounds like to these people. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then he just uses the Force to kill one of them nearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that he just comes off as such a religious, insane zealot that has
Mm.
so little to do with the Empire, but is like this obviously intimidating figure about like someone's controlling him because what he cares about has to be something different than what they care about because he cares about the
Mm.
Force. You know,
Mhm.
he cares about this, and whatever the hell that is doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with we're conquering planets, we're squashing rebellion. Like he's just
Yeah.
so unpractical compared to them. I just love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into our recommendations, folks. Allie, as our guest, would you mind starting us off?
Wait, what am I supposed to say?
You're supposed to recommend another movie if you have one in mind.
Oh, okay.
I thought I prepped you for this. I'm so sorry. Give me a
That's my
minute.
bad. Um, okay, because we're in the sci-fi genre,
Sure.
we watched Alien Romulus
Okay.
about a month ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good.
The whole Alien universe is
Yeah.
so fun to me,
It's
and I
great.
love all of the new ones. Romulus wasn't that great compared
Mhm.
to like Prometheus or some of the other
Okay.
ones, but it's still a really fun movie.
Okay.
And it's really, really scary. And I loved it.
Yeah,
Like
Hell
it's
yeah.
great. Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Megan, I know you like that one as well, right?
I did. Yes, I love the world that they create, like in that one.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's
Mhm.
good. Yeah. The
Perfect.
best critique I heard of it was from a client of mine where I was like, oh, we were talking, and he's like, my biggest problem was it was just a bunch of Gen Z kids all on this spaceship. And I was like,
Mm,
that is so funny.
that's fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was
I
a
kind
lot
of
of
get the like, why the
decisions.
fuck do I gotta see this generation?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of like facepalm
Like,
decisions because
yeah.
of their youth. And I
Yeah.
was like, am I ancient or are they just children?
Yes.
That's fair. Megan, do you have yours?
I'm gonna go Star Wars route of the little I know
Okay.
because I was talking with Allie that like I did enjoy the Force Awakens, like the new Disney
Yeah,
one.
The Force Awakens was good.
She mentioned so beautifully that like they exist pretty separate. They can exist kind of
Hmm.
separately from this franchise and kind of like let it be that. And I can totally like bow down to that and see that. Having seen the first one, but
Sure.
I liked Kylo Ren's character. I mean,
Yeah.
literally laughable
Sure.
that it's a carbon copy of Darth Vader, but I
Yeah.
do like me and Adam Driver, and I thought he did pretty good.
Allie, I'm gonna open up to you as well. Do you have a second favorite Star Wars movie you want to throw out?
Okay, well, I loved Return of the Jedi.
Did you? Okay. Fantastic.
But
Well,
honestly, I think it was because of it being like as a kid, I just loved the Wookiees. I loved the Redwood
sure.
Forest. I loved
Yeah.
all of that. I also Attack of the Clones has a soft spot in my heart
Fair
because
enough.
of Natalie Portman's character.
Yeah.
But
Also, look, Naboo's a cool planet. Naboo's a more
Naboo is
lush
a
place than we get
cool
to usually
planet.
hang out with. I like Naboo a
Yes.
lot. That's fair.
And like granted, like that movie, not a great movie, but a
Yeah.
fun one. Like very fun. I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, like them falling in love, you kind of like have to set aside the age difference situation and just
Hmm.
run with it.
I do like Ewan McGregor has like almost a detective story as Obi-Wan in
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
That like and
Oh
and
yeah,
that's
because he
something
goes to
that
that water planet.
right? But he also like he
Yes.
goes to the diner first to talk to his old pal, who's another alien. Like, oh, this is pretty classic noir shit, actually. Like, I know a guy who knows a guy, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
But that's something that was like, as a kid, like, what the fuck is this? Even though I'd seen a lot of noirs, but now it's like, as I remember last time I watched, like, this whole plot line is actually my favorite part of this movie.
Yeah.
And it should be noted Lucas didn't direct another movie after Star Wars until Phantom Menace of 22 years later. He wrote
Oh.
a lot of things, he produced a lot of things, like he obviously I should say he wrote. He has a lot of story by credits for
Hmm.
Willow and more famously the Indiana Jones franchise
Hmm.
Okay.
and some other things here and there. Those are the big ones. So he still had franchises, in many ways, Indiana Jones, I don't think is better, but like there's things that work better about it because Spielberg directed, you know,
Yeah.
and but you know, there's things that work. So like he also had this. Anybody who goes 22 years without doing anything is gonna and then tries it again. It's like, you know, I'm recently playing music again for the first time in like 15 years, and I'm not as good as the drums as I was when I played every fucking day. So you know, it happens. So I think he's forgiven a little bit. But I will say I think my favorite Star Wars movie, maybe total Star Wars favorite, but it's really neck and neck with the original, is The Last Jedi, because I think it raises some of the most interesting questions. Because at one point you have Benicio del Toro, who I love, which is great, but you raise really interesting questions about the morals of what's going on with the war and who are these people who were totally fine and not affected by it. It really brings up a lot more class issues and war issues than most of the other movies, because they go to a planet that's like a casino planet at one point, and you get into some kind of grittier, just like, yeah, it's war kid type of things that the other movies avoid. You raise a lot more interesting questions about, again, questions that are largely undone by the next movie, unfortunately, about really implying Rey is just some random person who's feels the Force, who can be a Jedi, and that's a really cool, interesting idea. Laura Dern's in this movie, and she's great. And you have, I think, an important, significant thing that really pissed off a lot of men at this is nearly every decision made by a man in this movie is wrong, especially made by Poe. Poe keeps trying to be the what's the word here? The hot shot. He keeps trying to go around the system because he thinks he's going to save the day, and he's always underinformed and not trusting his superiors, who in this case happen to be women, and he's always wrong. And it's really interesting, you know.
Yeah.
And Poe and Finn, and it's like I also don't think it's that aggressive a point. Like I think it works. It's a good kind of optics that a man is wrong and these women, and an older woman knows what she's talking about. I thought it was just pure optics, and that's right. I don't think it needs to be that much of a sexist point or sexism point, but a lot of people took it as, oh, men can't be smart. It's like, how do you think women have been represented for years? But I think it's just a really interesting idea to have a movie in a genre where so often the hero needs to go against the boss, and that guy's wrong. That's an interesting story, and having that in a Star Wars story is really interesting. So I liked it. I think it's interesting to have Luke very disillusioned. You know, I think it's cool to have him like, what the hell's all this about? Someone who really did devote himself to this, struggling, and I think that's very powerful. So I think that is maybe my favorite movie. There's also, for Lynch fans out there, there's some interesting Red Room and Twin Peaks allusions in some of the scenes that are intentional and beautiful. But I think that's like that more than most of the other movies. Like, this movie's actually saying something, whereas most of the other movies are fun.
Yeah.
And so let's try out for Ryan Johnson to make that one. Okay. I didn't actually recommend my last movie. I'm sorry. So my major recommendation outside of Star Wars is Hidden Fortress, because that is the Kurosawa movie that, in particular, Lucas modeled the plot structure of Star Wars off of. And the kind of key thing there, we haven't even talked about them actually, is that C-3PO and R2-D2, two dipshit droids, are really the narrators of this story. Also, two gay icons. They're absolutely. I'm sorry, we've had so many other things to talk about. We haven't come up with them, but
oh, that is so true, Zed.
And
R2
this is not just me.
Favorite.
This is the thing. Oh, what did you say? R2 is your favorite?
R2 was my favorite. As
R2 being so done and always knowing what to do, and like, I do not fucking have time for you. Like, he has such personality for just being like, again, the noise effects are incredible. The sound effects are like, you get
it's like
so
the
much
Bert and
personality
Ernie of the
it was absolutely Bert and Ernie. And folks, that was a dude in the R2 costume. That's not just like a structure. There was a guy in there.
Great.
I think it was Warwick Davis. I could be wrong, but incredible. And I think it's Anthony Daniels who played C-3PO, who must have done like theater in England or something, but thought he was too good to go to all the cons. And died broke, unfortunately. It's like if you're gonna be in a Star Wars
Oh.
movie, embrace that you're in a Star Wars movie and make them money from showing up to the conventions. So
Yeah.
lessons to future people, because I don't know, maybe you're listening to a lot more Star Wars out there. But
Mm.
great actor, did a great job, but kind of was embarrassed to have been in it, unfortunately.
Oh,
But Hidden Fortress is to just kind of bumbling dipshits who tell the story, who kind of keep happening upon this thing that does involve a princess who's kidnapped and a hero samurai who's again our main man Tishiro Nafoni who saves her, and the princess herself ends up being much more capable than expected, and becomes part of the team. But like
Mhm.
it's just a classic samurai film from Kurosawa that Lucas was very open about just modeling the entire structure off of that. So
huh.
if you enjoyed this and you want to take it back, which I do have to give credit, like he's very open about like Kurosawa, because
Mm.
I think we've talked about like David Fincher or some other filmmakers, or I'm blanking on some names right now, and I don't want to be too mean to anybody, but I can't remember their name, who like, oh no, I didn't watch that. It's like, you clearly watched that. You clearly were influenced by that.
Yeah.
I'll slam Tarantino kind of recently because I've been on that kick of like who like used to be way more open about referencing foreign films, and now it's like, here's this obscure movie from the 60s in America. It's like, okay, but like it used to be really cool, but Korean movies and Italian
Yeah.
and stuff, and open people up to other cultures rather than just a pretty sexist car movie from the 60s.
Mm.
So I think that's very cool that there's definitely a world of people who discovered Japanese cinema, at least because of George Lucas. And even if that's all he did, that's enough. So, all right, folks, that's the episode. But Allie, where can folks find you, and where can they support some amazing causes you're behind? Because you are you've adopted a Palestinian family. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have. Which I'm really happy that I'm able to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Allie Rose Felker. My last name is F as in Frank, Elker. And yeah, through a not even an organization, just like a group of people, I got connected
Mhm.
to a Palestinian family living in Gaza. His name is Khalid, and he's 21 years old. He lives
Wow.
with his two parents, two siblings, their wives, and all their kids. And for a
Wow.
while, they were all living in a tent, like 12 people total. And then they ended up moving back to where their home was, but they no longer have a home. Like it's completely rubble. And
Mhm.
so they're trying to figure out like what their next steps are. But in the meantime, there's just nothing. I think he's working as many odd jobs as he can, being like the only
Mm.
single, person. And so he has like a GoFundMe that I've been helping promote and support. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's very cool.
And there's thousands of similar stories and folks that
Yeah,
do. Um, Not to put too fine a point, but I think it's also so despicable that Trump is very open about opening hotels in Gaza
yeah,
soon.
Oh.
And so this is absolutely the plan. And it's so horrific, and it is it's something we can fight against. And unfortunately, a lot of this fight requires dollars. A lot of this fight
Mhm.
requires your voice. It requires putting your body at risk. Whatever you are capable to do, we will ask that you do, because this fight is not going to end anytime soon, and it's not going
Mhm.
to go away. So we were
And I
just
like
forward.
it's the piece about too that like we like kind of we were edging on that
Yeah,
we only have like us. There's
right.
no one else kind of looking out. So
Mm,
just truly like thank you, Allie. I say like thank
yeah,
you for your service, and I don't mean that in like jest or anything. Like
oh,
thank you
not at all. Yeah,
for for you and for your voice in all of this, and for of course coming on this episode and
oh,
speaking with us. It's amazing. So
oh, thank
um
you.
yeah.
but
Yeah,
Allie, I've I'm so proud to be your friend, and I'm so grateful you came back on this
don't make me
episode.
cry.
You did it, Seth. Good job.
Last time we made you cry because you were thinking how hot Nicolas Cage was, but next time I make letters. But no, seriously, you are doing such incredible work, and we're
Mm.
um I would say, folks, if you know of any organizations that are doing some work, please let us know.
Mhm.
I think this is a all hands on deck situation. You know, I've
Yeah.
criticized religion, but if you're aware of religious organizations that are doing this, let us know. We'd like to support them. We'd like to plug them, maybe have them on. But anything anybody can do to help, this is necessary. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll have the links in there. Let's try to end this on a positive note because we're all crooning. I don't know who's the hot one. Is it Carrie Fisher for you, Al?
It's a
the
Carrie
crew?
Fisher for me. Yeah.
Okay, fair
He's
enough.
hot.
See, this is
Yeah.
funny because last time we had you on, Allie, Megan had a moment with seeing Cher in.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So
Yeah,
both,
yeah.
whenever you've come on, one of you has had a bi-curious moment, which is
It's
interesting.
true.
Which
I
is
might choose
fair.
one of the aliens in the cantina, but I can't pick which one.
Wait, you can't choose between the aliens of which one you find the hottest?
There's so many to choose from in the
Okay, fair
cantina.
enough.
I just can't
One of them
like.
looks like a devil. That's pretty cool,
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That
Yeah.
maybe one of those.
right?
There was one with like glowing eyes, like smoking in a corner.
Yeah.
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 Just
It's
like,
The
also,
mystery.
yeah.
sorry, do you know the horrible name George Lucas gave to the music they're playing, the genre of music they're playing?
No, wait.
Mm-mm.
Okay, because obviously, what would you describe the music you're hearing?
Cantina. It was the cantina music.
Right, it's jazz, right? From
Oh,
Jazz.
okay, yeah. Yeah.
no, but that's not the name he gave it. He called it jizz.
Oh my
No.
God.
That's like in canon by Lucas, because I don't
I
think he
think he
knew what that word
knew.
meant. I don't know. Maybe he did,
I
maybe he
don't
didn't.
know.
But
They
like,
didn't have Urban Dictionary back then.
right, because like every now and then, like there'll be like a Star Wars, like, oh yeah, there's no such thing as glass. There's glass. Like what? Like why would you reinvent? And I guess it's because it's supposed to be, which is another fun thing about Star Trek. Like Earth exists in Star Trek, so you can pull from
Yeah.
Earth history, and that's often very necessary. You know, you can have characters reference Shakespeare
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than a made-up version of Shakespeare. But yeah,
Well,
he called the music jazz.
Star
Wow.
Trek is in the future, right?
It's also in the future. That's
Whereas
true, because
Star
you're
Wars
right.
is
This
in
is
the
a
past.
long time ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's right.
that's a good point. You're right. That's our
Yeah.
past. Really
Yeah.
makes you think.
Really
It's
makes you
like
think.
I never understood why it's a long time ago.
I
It's
also
just-
never understood that.
I think we've alluded this for our alien episode though. Like it was very new. It's kind of the last thing that it was very new to have a sci-fi movie where the world looked so lived in and looked used and dirty, and it was not all
Yes.
crumb.
Yes.
Because the
It's kind of
closest you get,
steampunk a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
actually, you're right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I think before that, the closest you'd get is like a movie like Metropolis, where you go to where the workers live, and that's dirtier,
Yeah.
but still looks pretty new. So, he gets the movie, I should say, gets incredible recognition as it should, as for production design. So, folks, we'll leave you with that happier thought. Thank you so much for listening to Film Optimist. We hope you enjoy this. We hope you support and donate and follow us and don't report us. And we'll listen again. Allie, we'd love to have you back on again. Thank you so much for
Oh,
coming on
thanks
the
so much. It's
podcast.
been fun. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Allie.
Yeah.
As a odd teaser, folks, our next episode will be a Star Trek episode on one of their movies, and I promise you it's not the movie you're expecting.
Oh.
Until next time.